Hey, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. I've been reading some of the books that I was given by my friend Roger. Roger and Bing came and visited us, and they invited us for a very nice couple of days on Cebu. Fortunately, our timing was good, and we got in and out before all of this mess with the virus happened. So we had a great time, and Roger, knowing my passion for reading books, brought me some very, very interesting books. And one of them, which I'll do a video on another time when I've gotten into it a little bit more, but I'll just show you and just in case our quirky camera has reversed the the title around, which it sometimes does. When it's just a face, you don't really care. But this is a book that I tried to get for quite a time. Had to leave my copy back in the US when I came, but the copy was by, the book is Who Built the Moon by, let me see, Christopher Knight and Alan Butler. And this is, Christopher Knight was the co-author of the bestseller The Hiram Key, and Alan Butler, and they are the authors of the best-selling Civilized One, which was, I think, the precursor to Who Built the Moon. Now, didn't want to go into Who Built the Moon, and I've already gone off on it because it's such an interesting book. But it's dependent. It depends on the hypothesis that the moon was actually constructed and put there, but that's another thing. What I came across while I was reading this book was the pendulum, and the pendulum, we all have that idea of the pendulum swinging back and forth, and a lot of the time the context that we think of that in is how the pendulum is a symbol for good and bad. So when the pendulum swings, and it swings this way, it's good, and then it'll come back to the middle where it's neither good nor bad, and then it will swing that way. Okay, so it's going like that. But what was fascinating was that the pendulum can, in the minds of some scientists, can be shown to show, can be used to show the movement of the Earth, which most people think of as a sphere. Some people out there still think in terms of it being flat, and unless you are absolutely totally up on the science, you'll be hard put to argue them, because they know quite a bit, and they can argue their point, but I'll go into that in a second. Now, the pendulum is not, the pendulum, as soon as I saw this, I saw the phrase in the book, I saw the Foucault, and I'll spell that for you because it's a French word, French name, and varies a little bit on the pronunciation. I don't speak French myself, so had to look that up. Foucault, and the way that I'm hearing it pronounced is Faux or Foucault. So let's say Foucault and agree that that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying that pronunciation. So Foucault used the pendulum by various lengths of what it is. It's a weight. It's a weight on the end of. Let me try and pull this up so that you can at least see it. And there is a place, the Science Museum in London,
on the dust jacket of
has. Let me see.
An enthralling mystery, a breathtaking roller coaster ride through a world of ideas and aberrations, an adventure into the modern mind. One Colonel Ardenti, who has unnaturally black, brilliantine hair, an Adolphe Menjou mustache, wears maroon socks, and once served in the...
Now, well, I'll just show you the picture then. There's the picture. Now that's the picture, I think, of the pendulum that is in the Science Museum. And in the Science Museum, it hangs on about 30 feet of line. And it hangs down and above the ground, and the journey, the passage of the pendulum, it has a tiny magnet at the top of that, which just gives a tiny kick of energy to keep the pendulum moving. And what it does is it goes in and around, and it goes onto this kind of thing like this, and it almost goes around like a clock, which it was used at one time, and possibly still is, to set or enable the time to be set on clocks. And what's really interesting is that it will make, depending on the length, you should look this up. Look up the pendulum when you go onto YouTube. You really learn some interesting stuff, or I did anyway, in my ignorance. And if you get a bottle, there were lots of different ways that it had been done. If you get a bottle, turn the bottle upside down, fill it with white sand, and put a little hole into the cap, and then tie it up so that the bottle is like this, right? It will swing back and forth, and it will drop a thin line of the white sand, which, if you put it onto a dark background, it will make these incredible patterns, and very predictable patterns, because the forces that are moving it are predictable in this particular context. It's showing the movement of the Earth. Well, actually, it's not the pendulum that's moving, strictly speaking. If you believe in the sphere, as most people do, the sphere itself, in other words, planet Earth, is what is moving on its axis. So it's turning like this, and as it turns, it influences the pendulum. But I know of the pendulum for other reasons, and in other subjects. A friend of mine in the UK used the pendulum every day to answer all kinds of spiritual questions, and the pendulum could be made to respond depending on the question. If you had to pose specific questions. It had to be a question. It couldn't be. You couldn't ask it, "What are your thoughts on the situation in North Korea?" You couldn't ask it a question like that. But what you could say is, you could say, "Would it be wise for me to move forward at this time?" And it might say either yes or no. And by asking a series of questions like that, you could actually get particular answers. Now, because we are all connected, we're connected to Mother Earth, we're connected by all the spiritual means and theory, and we're all part of the same thing. We're all made up of the same basic building blocks of atoms and photons and neutrons and a lot of things that I can't fully explain. But we're made up of the same composition. We're certainly not the same makeup or not the same construction, but all of the building blocks are the same. And so the idea that something such as the force of inertia, which is what moves the pendulum, and the other forces of gravity. All of these things can be shown to be influencing more than just the swinging back and forth of a pendulum and the pattern that it takes. It can be used to interpret different things. Now, it can also be argued, while I'm saying that this is a sphere, there are others, and you will find this if you look it up on YouTube and you type in pendulum. It will come up, and there's one there which says in the same line of references of Foucault's pendulum, in the same one there, if I can find it now, it's probably gone, isn't that always the way? See, no, it's disappeared now. But there's somebody arguing for the flat Earth, and they maintain that Foucault's pendulum, which is swinging back and forth, and according to some, can be used to show time, measurements, the days, how many days in a year. All kinds of stuff can be shown, can be illustrated by use of the pendulum, and depending, as I said, on the length of the cable, wire, string, whatever it is that holds the pendulum. And in the case of the Science Museum, it is about 30 feet. So it swings very, very slowly. It takes about 2.5, or 3 seconds to go from A to B and back to A again, I guess. So it depends on a lot of things. But the flat Earth theorists say that it can be shown that Foucault's experiments with the pendulum were not that accurate, because the pendulum itself is made up of various metals. Some of them are lead, which are extremely heavy, of course, and copper, and they have different metals have different magnetic qualities, and the Earth itself can be seen to have magnetic qualities. And so the flat Earth people, they are saying that the experiments by Foucault do not allow for the composition of the metals that are within the makeup of the pendulums that are being used. In fact, Foucault did make some interesting claims that depending depending on the position relative to the Earth itself, depending on whether you were at the North Pole, the South Pole, whether you were at the equator, the pendulum would actually respond in a different way, would swing in a different way. The most simple way of looking at the pendulum is that if it's symbolic of the swing between good and bad. So no matter what a terrible time you may be having right now, the pendulum will return to the center and will then continue on its swing to the good. Then of course it's going to come back again. So there are all kinds of different cycles that are happening all the time, but the pendulum does illustrate sometimes how little that we know. And one of the things that is also there, I also knew someone in America who used the dowser, and the dowser can be it can be something that you hold between the hands like this, and depending on whether it moves like this from side to side or up and down, you can use it to ask to learn certain things. And I've actually watched my brother-in-law Timio dowse for water and find it and dig and put in a well. Alright, so ask the question, accept the answer, act upon the answer, and you will end up with a well. And I actually was able, when we put in the well at my other brother-in-law, Gilbert, who I call the grassroots pastor. Grassroots pastor Gilbert had to dig for another well, and he used a Japanese method of using short pieces of bamboo put together in a square just on the ground, and depending how they moved, and they did move, I saw it, I was the one that arranged them under their supervision. Yeah, put it like this, and then that piece goes there, and so on, and dowsed for water, and found water. It was indicated, this was it. We moved it from place to place, chose the best one, the best indicator, dug the well, found the water, and installed a pump, and supplied the houses of, supplied running water to at least to a faucet outside, very close to the house, of about 7 homes. So there's stuff there which is very interesting, at least very interesting. The thing to do is to try not to out and out disbelieve. No, I don't believe that. Then you have no chance of finding out about anything. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now.